let's just sew whatever. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be making the Blythe bag by iThinkSew. I just had a total brain fart. I was like, what is this called? I don't know. So I used this fun flying key fabric I designed, these zipper pulls as well that match, and this vinyl from Bodio, and waterproof canvas for the lining. So I love that it has a zippered top, and then we just added one zippered pocket to the lining. This bag is such a cute size, and the pattern does come with two sizes, so you could make an itty bitty one and a big one. You could probably print it smaller and make like one for an actual Blythe doll. That would be really cool. But yeah, I even talk about how we interface it. I'm sure I mess up at some point and correct it, so maybe you'll learn something from that. But I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial. And so really quick, I'm going to go over interfacing. I've got a 3-inch wide crossbody strap that I've interfaced with the woven fuse. I've got 2 front panels that I interfaced with woven fuse. Oh, wait, what? Yes. Okay, so this is the flap interfaced with woven fuse as well. And then for the underside of the flap, instead of interfacing, I've decided to just go with vinyl to give it a little bit of thickness and stability. And then I've reinforced my snap connector with Decaville light, just a little scrap. Same on my main body piece, just a little scrap of Decaville light. I'm using waterproof canvas to line my bag, so I don't need to add any interfacing there. And then again, for the side panel, I've decided to do vinyl, so I don't need to add interfacing. If you wanted to make your bag a little loftier, I would recommend adding fusible fleece. I think that would give this bag a nice quality, a nice feel. And the other thing that I am changing on this bag is, instead of the zipper pocket being way down here, I'm gonna kind of add it to the center and apply this little overlay, just to give it a little pizzazz. So let's go ahead and get started. For this bag, I'm using zipper by the yard, so I've gone ahead and cut a 14-inch zipper and 2 10-inch zippers for my zippered pockets. And then I'm gonna add the zipper pulls. Make sure if you're using a nylon zipper that you iron it to get any little wrinkles out. So we're gonna start with the crossbody strap. I have left the ends of my crossbody strap uninterfaced so that I can fold them over so that there's no raw edges. So I'm just gonna press that down. And if you leave it uninterfaced, it reduces the amount of bulk that will be within the strap. And then what we're gonna do is fold this in half, long ways, the whole way down. And just keep folding and ironing. I like to use the steam setting for this so that it really creates a nice crease. If you decide to use vinyl or leather for this strap, you may have a different method you want to use, like tape, something like that. But I just really wanted to make this bag simple. So then what we're gonna do is open that up and fold in the raw edges. And you might be skilled enough to do both sides at once. I am not, unfortunately. As many crossbody straps as I've made, I just have trouble doing both at the same time and like getting it correct. So, not even gonna try. I've started with 3 pre-wound bobbins. Well, I pre-wound them. I didn't purchase them pre-wound. So we'll have plenty of bobbin to finish this project. And I always like to start with fresh bobbins so that I can make my crossbody strap first and know that you got plenty of thread there to finish it off. I always like to get my straps out of the way first if I can. So you can see we're just folding and ironing And then we'll fold it in half one time again, so that there's absolutely no raw edges. You might be able to use like a bias tape maker. A friend of mine said she tried it and it didn't work, but that, you never know. Maybe she just didn't have the finesse necessary. And I made my crossbody strap the width of the fabric, so if you see this raw edge that's kind of fuzzy, it's because I just ripped the fabric straight on the grain. So I know it's nice and straight. And then again, you don't have to fold it in half and press, but it does hold nicely if you do. And you can kind of decide which part of the fabric, like which side of the strap you want to be the front or the back. So you can see this is going to be my front. Look at that, that's so pretty. All right, so let's get sewing. All right, I've got my stitch length set to 5. I've got my pretty side facing up, and we're just gonna start on the long open edge. We fold it in, back stitch, make sure we get all of our loose threads out of the way so there's no knotting. Just go straight down. I like to fold the excess fabric over my shoulder, my left shoulder, because it seems to feed a little bit easier that way. Okay, leave your needle in, pivot, back stitch a little bit. We'll go down the other side. And you can see I'm using my hands to really hold it in place and make sure it doesn't move. When I get to the end, sew over that as well. All right, so then we'll keep our pretty side where we want it. There's my pretty side. So we'll have the non-pretty side face up and add our slide adjuster and our 2 snap hooks. I'm using all 3/4 inch wide hardware. So I'll just slide this through. And since we have a nice folded edge, I can just create a little box stitch. I don't need to fold anything under. You can do a box stitch or just 2 parallel lines, but you definitely want to secure it. 1 line is not enough. What's really cool about this pattern is there's 2 sizes included. So you can make it for a little girl or a teenager or, you know, the whole family. Okay. So my wrong side is still facing up so I can see where I folded this over. I am folding the fabric on itself to create a loop. I'm not sure if you can see down here, there's a little bit of a loop. So I can see the pretty side of the fabric, and I'm going to slide my slide adjuster with the snap hook, or not the slide adjuster, the snap hook facing up. Slide that through, keeping that loop. And then you're gonna go through the top end of your slide adjuster. Slide that through. Make sure your loop sits nicely and your snap hook is out. And then you're going to feed it through the top end again, creating a loop. Make sure your fabric hasn't twisted. So you can see I've got my pretty side facing up. And then keeping it facing up, you're going to slide your other snap hook through and fold this end under. So you can see. So this is where we're going to top stitch now. Or you can add 2 rivets, or you can top stitch and add rivets, whatever floats your boat. So then I'll just pivot, put my needle in, backstitch, and then you can do diagonally. So across the top again, do another diagonal, and then that's a solid strap. She's gonna last forever. So if there's any weird looping, you can usually pull on one of your threads to tighten it. And then since I'm using a polyester or nylon thread, I like to use a lighter just to seal those ends. But that is it for our crossbody strap. It's all ready to go, and we're gonna just set it aside. Here you go. Alrighty, so the next thing we're gonna work on is attaching our magnetic snaps, just to get all of our hardware out of the way. So I'm gonna grab those pieces that are reinforced with Decaville Light, and I've already got my snap placement marked out. So what I'm gonna do is take the washer of my magnetic snap, and I'm going to line it up. My center mark, that big dot I made, I'm going to line up with the center of my washer and make 2 parallel lines. So there's where I lined it up, there's my 2 parallel lines. And repeat that on the flap and the side the flap will close to. And then on the flap, we're gonna add the male magnetic snap. So the thinner side. If your snap is a thin snap, it really honestly doesn't matter. I'm using a little seam ripper here. This is a surgical seam ripper from Tula Pink. It doesn't have to be like this. We're gonna just carefully open up those little parallel lines we made. Okay, so we'll add this to the flap. Make sure that your hardware is on the right side of the fabric, not the wrong side. And then you can bend this in or out. I think it's personal preference. I don't know that there's a right or wrong way. Maybe you know, you can comment below. One thing I like to do is honestly both. So on one side I'll bend it out, and on one side I'll bend it in, because the different pulling, it may make it stronger. Who really knows though? So there is how that lines up. This is our body fabric and this is our flap fabric. So that's all taken care of. So what we're gonna move on to now is the front flap zippered pocket. So if you're following the way I'm doing it, I just cut out this 7-inch overlay. So it's just gonna be a 7-inch zippered pocket, not 8 inches like the pattern has. Because can I ever really follow a pattern? And then I've cut 2 lining pieces that are 9 inches wide by 7.5 inches long. This is so I have plenty of fabric around that overlay, because when you add an overlay, at least when you add it this way, when you sew it down, you can see you lose a lot of seam allowance on your zipper pocket lining pieces. So what we're gonna do is fold one of our zipper pocket pieces in half. Doesn't matter. You want to fold it so it's 4.5 inches wide, so that on the 9-inch top. And I'm going to mark out a 7-inch box, and I want to leave about like 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches on the top. So again, that you have plenty of room to add that overlay. So here's what that looks like. And then I'm gonna fold the flap in the opposite direction. So we want right sides together. So I'm just gonna fold this in half, make a very gentle crease line. You don't wanna go too severe. And then we're gonna just line that up where we want it. And I think I'm going to add it so that my zipper box, yeah, is about 3.5 inches from the top. I think that'll be good. So there's plenty of fold over. It's not weird to get in and out of. And I'm just gonna sew 2 parallel lines around that zipper box. You can use pins or clips to hold it in place. I just kind of hold it. Switching my stitch length down to a 4. You can start by hand cranking your needle in place. Make sure you backstitch. Backstitch at the beginning and end, and then I'm just going to jump over to that next line. And then again, backstitch. You want them to be as parallel as possible. You can see my back stitching, and my thread lines up pretty close to my pen marking, so I think it looks pretty good. And then I'm going to take some really sharp scissors and I'm going to snip through the center, and then once I get about 1/2 inch from the outer edge, I'm going to then cut into the corners. But you don't want to snip through your stitching, you just want to get right up next to it. Repeat that on the other side. And then I'm going to iron using plenty of steam, since there's no vinyl I can melt or anything, but you're gonna flip it through so that wrong sides are together instead of right sides together. And make sure you press it. All right, so there's what it looks like, nice and pressed with steam. And we're going to kind of just baste our zipper in. So I want to make sure that one side lines up with the raw edge of my zipper pocket. Since the zipper pull I'm using is so large, I can't do my normal method where I keep my zipper pull out of the way. It's just way too big to slip through. So you don't want to sew super close to the edge, but we know we're going to cover this stitch with our overlay. So I'm just sewing like 1/4 inch from the outer edge instead of 1/8 inch like I normally would. And I'm not worried about being too straight or beautiful, just basting it in place. If you are not adding an overlay, make sure you watch how your stitches look. You don't want them to be wonky. Okay, I'm getting close to the zipper pull, so I'm just gonna kind of move it out of the way. Then I'll pivot and finish off my stitch. Okay. So there's what it looks like on that side. It's not beautiful. And this one, it's okay. It's not bad. Make sure that you can zip it nicely. And these flying key pulls are available on my website if you're interested. The fabric is also my design. It's just not for sale at the moment. I release new fabric designs every 1st of the month. We like to change it up quite a bit. Normally I would use a basting spray to hold my accent plate in place. I think I'm just gonna use some 1/4 inch wide basting tape. Just a few pieces. If your machine doesn't like tape, make sure that you put it in places you're not really going to be sewing over. And And that's why I definitely recommend the 1/4 inch wide. All right, so now we can lay the overlay down. Make sure your zipper pull is not underneath it. Oh yeah, this looks glorious. And line it up. You don't really want to be able to see any of the fabric underneath through it. So there's that overlay. The vinyl I'm using is from bodo.com. She sells really fun vinyls, but they are somewhat limited stock. All right, so I'm switching my stitch length to a 4.5. I'm gonna change up the camera angle for you guys so you can see it a little bit better. All right, so you can either start on the inside or the outside. I usually like to start on the inside just so I can get that out of the way. I've switched my stitch length over to a 4.5. So I've got a little bit bigger of a top stitch, but nothing too major. You just want to sew about 1/8 of an inch from the outer edge of this overlay. I'm getting close to my zipper pull, so I'm going to leave my needle in and unzip it. Come on now. And I'm going to pivot. If this is your first time doing an overlay, I would recommend a matching top stitch thread for sure. Okay, getting close to the zipper pull, so I zip it back up. And then as I get close to where I started, I'm going to meet back with it, back stitch, and then just jump over to the outside edge. Make sure that your lining fabric is still nice and flat. You don't want to have trimmed your zipper down at all. We're just going to go around the outside, around the outside. This zipper overlay is a template from Tops and Bobbins. They sell a set of them. But you can also just kind of sketch it out yourself. It's about 1/2 inch from all edges of a zipper pocket, so you can just have fun with the shape. Okay, and then I'm going to trim what I call my jump stitch before I get back to it and can't get it easily. And then we'll just back stitch or tie it off from the back, whatever you like to do. But you've got a little zipper overlay that looks super fancy for your zipper pocket. So then we're gonna finish off the zipper pocket. I'm gonna trim down this little piece of zipper tape that's hanging off the edges. You don't need it. You want it to be within the seam allowances, but you don't need a bunch of overhang, you know. So then I will clip this together. We are not going to be birthing the bag through this pocket, so I can just sew the whole thing shut. So I'm going to start up in the top corner, back stitch. Ooh, sorry for shaking the camera. I don't want to make this pocket too long, so I'm going to cut it shorter. Sorry again. And then sew across the top. And then for stability, like if you're worried someone might have sharp objects in the pocket, like a pencil or something, you can add 2 stitch lines to the bottom, so if they get through one, there's kind of an extra back there to reinforce. And honestly, you could do that around the whole pocket. So there is the front. And the reason I trimmed it down is because I didn't want it to be really in the seam allowances of the front flap. As you can see. Ooh, yeah. Oh, might help if my zipper sits nicer. All right, so now we're gonna put the right sides together for our flap. Line up those top edges and clip. You're not sewing the top shut yet. And then you can decide which side you want to sew from. I think I'll sew with my vinyl side facing down, just because it seems like it'll work okay. If you're using 2 layers of cotton and you want the bag to have a little bit more stability, I would recommend adding fleece to the flap just to give it a little weight to it. But now we're going to just stitch around the outside. This pattern uses a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you can trim down your flap if you would like to, but I'm not going to because I would like it to have a bit of a weight to it. So all I'm gonna do is carefully take my scissors and snip around this curve. Don't cut through your stitches, but I'm just clipping around the curve so that it sits nicer. So you can see these little snips I've made. So it's not much, but it's a little, and then we'll flip it right sides out, and it's a nice big flap, so you don't have to fight too much with it. And then if you used all cotton fabrics and no vinyl, you could press this with your iron really quick. I did not, unfortunately, and I'm worried I might hit the overlay. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of hand roll the seam and add clips. So you can see I'm pressing it out as far as it can go, just by rolling it. You could also, if you are making this bag out of all vinyl, you could steam your ironing board, get it nice and hot, and then just lay the fabric on top to remove any wrinkles or help make your vinyl a little more malleable. I thought about adding piping to this bag, but it really doesn't need it. However, it would look so cute with some piping. So now we don't need this top opening on our bag anymore, so we can clip that shut, switch my stitch length to a 5, and we're just gonna sew around the whole thing. If you would like to, you could add 2 stitch lines just to give it a little accent, something fun. You could sew them right next to each other or whatever, but I'm just gonna do 1. Just gonna follow the outside edge, back stitch at the top. And I know I have plenty of bobbin because we haven't gotten that far in the bag, so I'm not gonna run out. And you can see by not trimming down the seam allowance how much of an edge it's given the bag. It's so edgy. But no, it just adds this weight to that edge. It looks so nice. Close off the top. Okay, so there is the flap all finished. So what I'm gonna do is fold this in half and snip my center so that when I go to line it up with the bag, I know where my center is. All right, while I have you here, I'm gonna sew up the side gusset pieces. Again, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, switch your stitch length back to like a 4.5 or a 4. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. And then if you wanted to, you could add a little fancy like stitch line. You could butterfly stitch this down. I think I'll do that for the exterior. That would look nice. So I've opened up that seam and I'm just sewing across either side. And that helps to reduce bulk as well. So that's what that looks like from that side. I am not going to worry about it on the lining. I'm just going to trim it down. And that'll reduce enough of the bulk. So let's go ahead and finish the exterior. And then we will work on our lining. We have a zipper panel to do, as well as another zippered pocket, which since I've already shown you one, I'm just going to add off camera. Just know that you need to add it. So I've snipped the center bottom of the front panel. I'm going to line up that center seam and clip. And then line it up with the top edge. And then you'll just clip out the rest of the curve. If you have trouble getting your materials to line up, if you remember how we snipped the flap, you could also snip your gusset so that it lines up a little bit better. So how that would work is you just add little tiny snips way into your seam allowance, and it kind of helps your fabric reach those curves a little bit better. And I'm using a combination of hair clips and the Wonder clips to help hold everything in place. So I think I may have used too big of a seam allowance here, so it's not quite lining up right here. Not an issue. That'll be hidden within the seam allowance, so I'm not going to worry about it. So 3/8 inch seam allowance. My stitch length is at 4. I'm going to back stitch. And what's kind of nice about these smaller seam allowances is you don't really need to trim much down. Back stitch over that area for reinforcement. And finish off at the top. And then we are just going to repeat that step on the back side here. And I'm going to snip the center of the bottom of the back side and the top. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is where my flap is going to get lined up with once we're putting the bag fully together. So I may as well do it while I'm thinking about it. So again, I'm just going to clip the bottom and the tops. And just slowly work out that curve. I don't think my sewing clips will, or my hair clips will hold this gusset in place now that it's gotten a bit thinner. So I'm just going to use the sewing clips, Wonder clips. that. So then we can just sew along there. There is a zipper panel in this pattern. You could honestly choose not to add it, especially if you're making it for a little one. They may not really need it, but it is good security. Perfect. So there is the exterior of the bag finished. I'm just gonna flip it out and we can see how our gusset looks. Oh, I'm so glad I did a vinyl with it. So it would be super cute to add piping to this gusset as well, but definitely not necessary. So yeah, let's move on to working on the interior. All right, so I've got my interior zipper pocket added. We went ahead and we are leaving the bottom open so that we can turn our bag through it. So you want to leave that unsewn so we can turn the whole bag through it, and then you don't see in the lining where you left it out then. It's kind of fun. So while I was marking out my zipper pocket, I went ahead and snipped my top center and my bottom center, and I'm gonna do that for the second lining piece. And we're gonna go ahead and add our gusset for the lining. Now we're almost done. Like, once those things are done, it's like home stretch, especially if you're not adding a zipper to the top. I'm questioning whether I want to or not, but I think I will. Stay true to the pattern. So clip out those 3 marks and then work our way around the curve. And if things don't quite line up, that's not a huge deal because you want a wider seam allowance in the bottom of your bag anyway. So like this just isn't quite lining up. We can also do those little snip marks within our seam allowance on the gusset to help it fit in place. It really does work. I mean, so you don't want to increase your seam allowance at the top of your lining because then it's not going to fit correctly inside the exterior. You want that to be the same, but come on. There we go. We got it. We got it. So there it is, clipped in place. So we're just gonna sew around the outside edge. So again, I'm starting at the standard seam allowance that I used for the exterior, and then you're just slowly going to increase it by a little bit. You don't want to go too crazy so that it's short, but you want to increase your seam allowance so that it's not saggy or it's not too big. And then as you make your way back to the top, go back to the standard seam allowance. So I'm going to trim down all this excess so that it's not bulky in our side seam, so it sits nicely. If you want to reinforce, you could sew a second line of stitching that's just right next to your first line, kind of like we did on that zippered pocket, but I think it's fine. And then we'll work on our other side. So the zippered panel is going to be fun. I can't recall. I went ahead and cut out I cut out 4 lining pieces that are the same size as stated in the directions. I thought the pattern piece only said 2, which would leave raw edges, but would reduce the bulk, but I just went ahead and did 2, so it's not raw edges. So if you're using a vinyl for the zipper panel, I don't think you really need to do a lining in the vinyl. I think you could just get away with the 1 layer of vinyl, kind of like the pattern states. So yeah, now we will sew around that gusset. Make sure you keep an eye out for your lining piece and avoid it, that zipper pocket. And again, we're increasing our seam allowance as we sew into the lining. I can see my zipper pocket coming around that corner, so I'm just going to flip it up. And then we'll go back to our normal seam allowance. Oh, just ran out of bobbin. Perfect timing. Thank you, bobbin. I'm telling you, it's the magic sticker. Alright, replacing my bobbin so I don't forget. I've done that so many times where I'm just sewing along and I'm like, oh yeah, my bobbin ran out and I forgot to change it. Alright. Trim that down. Just gonna set that over there for now because we're gonna work on our D-ring connectors and our zipper panel. So for the D-ring connectors, I cut vinyl to 4 inches long by 1.5 inches wide. If you are making yours out of fabric, you're gonna wanna cut them 3 inches wide and fold like we did the crossbody strap. But I'm just taking double-sided tape from waywack.com down the center. I'm gonna fold in my raw edges. And I'm gonna sew down the sides to reinforce with a nice fresh bobbin. And then I cut them apart. Now something you could do to have a little fun with the bag to change it up a little bit is you could actually sew the connector. You could like fold it raw ends to the center like that. Those are my raw ends. And you could attach it to the side gusset panel like that with your D-ring attached. But I'm just gonna sew it within that side seam. I should add the D-ring first. It's a good idea. And then I'm going to sew down the center of the vinyl to keep that D-ring in place, but you could also just add a rivet next to the D-ring. But I'm just going to sew down the center and back stitch like that. So you can see there's my center stitch line. That just holds the D-ring in place, keeps it from sliding around. Looks cool, I guess. What in the world happened? I guess I lost my bobbin. Come on now. There we go. That was weird. That was weird. probably left my threads too short. That wasn't good. Let's do that again. There we go. So then I will lay these on the side gusset. I'm going to keep about an inch within my seam allowance, but I'm just going to baste that on the bag. Again, keeping an inch in the seam allowance. We're not going to trim that down. That's going to help reinforce that connector. So that's out of the way. We're going to work on our zipper panel. So we need a 14-inch long zipper piece that we prepped in the beginning. And then, like I said, I've got the two 12-inch pieces by like 1 1/8 of an inch or something. And I cut 2 of those out of my lining so that we can make our zippered panel. The easiest way that I have found to do this is to lay all 4 pieces of this zipper panel together. Line up one of the edges. Yeah, you can see. I'm going to take 1/4 inch wide double-sided tape. You can fold this if you're using quilting cotton, but I find it easier to use waterproof canvas. I don't have to interface it, but it doesn't stay creased as well as quilting cotton does. So I'm going to just add some tape to that. Unpeel it and then fold all those over right now. Okay, and then we'll flip this around. And do the same thing on this side. Was the worst thing that could have happened. Okay, cool. Luckily it was held on fairly gently. Because even if I didn't like cut these all to the exact same width, as I'm folding them, they will become the same width. So that's cool. And then I'm just gonna cut them apart. This tape may not hold the waterproof canvas for a very long time, so you want to work somewhat quickly or clip them shut. So I'm just going to pull my zipper to the end because we're actually going to be adding ends to our zipper. So this isn't like a normal one where we square off the end of our zipper and put it into the seam. Nope. So I'm clipping it. I've centered it on my zipper. So I've got a little bit of teeth hanging off either end. I'm going to flip it over and line up the other side. You can baste your zipper in place and then flip it over if you want, but I'm not going to waste time doing that when these clips will hold it for me. So I'm going to sew down that side. Make sure that your stitches are within your zipper panel. You really don't want to see them on your zipper tape. And then again, as we get to the end, back stitch within the zipper panel. So you can see just a little bit, and then we're going to flip this up with the iron, pressing both sides and top stitch, and then you just repeat that for the other side of the zipper panel. Okay, so I've got it pressed. I'm going to clip it up. Any of your loose threads you can fold into the middle, starting on one edge, top stitch. And then here I like to pull on my zipper panel and my zipper, pull them apart so that I know they're nice and you can baste across the top if you'd like. So there is that. So I'm just gonna repeat those steps on the other side. I'll time lapse it, and then I will show you how to finish the ends of the zipper, and then we're almost done with the bag. Okay, so zippered panel. Oh, my music was still playing. Zippered panel is done. We have folded it in half to line up the ends of the zipper panel and snip to the centers. And now we're gonna work on these zipper ends. So I'm just gonna take a piece of double-sided tape down the center. This is a square, so it's not going to matter which way. But what I wanna do is fold in the ends. Fold one side to match the width of your zipper. Just lining it up. My tape isn't long enough. Great, love it. And then fold the other side in just a little bit to create like a no raw edged square. And then we're just gonna fold that onto the end of our zipper. And that finishes it off. So that your zipper pull can't just go zoom, you know, just fly off. So I'm gonna just sew a square around that. So that your zipper pull is closed off. And repeat that on the other side. Okay. If your zipper is fraying a little bit, what you can do is take a lighter, just really quick, hit the ends with it, and it'll stop fraying. Again, just fold the tops a little bit. I'm using waterproof canvas, so I didn't need to add any interfacing. And if you're using a regular like quilting cotton or something too, you probably wouldn't need to interface it because you're folding it so much. But that is going to be personal preference. Whatever you choose works. Also, I don't really care. It's your bag. Do what you want. But like in a good way. Like in a friendly way, I don't care. I don't mind, I guess, is the nicer way of saying it. Okay, and then just getting that under the machine. Come on, the feed dogs are catching. And then just sew the square. So I'm using my lighter to get any threads that are too long, anything like that. So I'm also going to yank on those zipper ends and make sure they're fully caught. Unzip your zipper, just make sure everything's good. So then we want to grab our lining piece that's nice and completed. And I've already marked out my top centers. And I like to make sure my zippers are gonna zip the same way. So you want to lay it so that you can see your zipper facing up when it's lined up with your lining. So technically lining sides together, but that might be kind of confusing. So my lining is wrong side out, and I'm setting my zipper inside so that I can see the zipper teeth. It's basically, just imagine that the bag is put together. It's not really, but when you open up that flap, you want to see that zipper peeking up at you, smiling, showing its teeth like, hi. And you're like, okay, great. You're where you're supposed to be. See? So there's my zipper pull, facing up, greeting you, smiling. And I'm gonna be honest, I did not read the directions. I don't know if the ends are supposed to be caught in that seam or not. I'm gonna guess no. So I'm gonna fold those down so that I don't sew over them. And I'm just gonna baste my zipper panel to the top of the lining. So you're essentially following your basting stitch that you've already done. If your zipper pulls in the way, unzip it, etc. Make sure you're catching all layers. So we've got one side basted into place, and then we're just gonna sew the other side into place. I'll unzip the zipper so it's a little easier. Okay, yeah. That's not popping out. Let's trim all of our extra little threads, because those could pop up later, and we don't want to see them. Like, bye. No, get out of here. All right, let's baste our flap on. So you want this to be right sides together on the back side. Line up that center snip. If this is confusing, what we're gonna do is imagine it's all together again, just kind of like the zipper, and flip the flap over. Why is that my new favorite sentence? Like, let me just flip this flap. Okay, so there's the wrongs, there's the back of our flap, there's the front of our bag. When you flip it over, it's good, okay? So reverse engineer what you're doing if you get confused, and that will help. So I'm gonna go ahead and baste the flap in place. And then what we're gonna do is turn our exterior so it's wrong side out. The flap is longer, so what we're gonna do is kind of fold it at the bottom. You can kind of see my flap is folded in on itself. We're gonna flip this, unzip it all the way, we're gonna flip this right side out. We're just gonna pop it inside the exterior. Shouldn't be too bad. Press along our gusset. Make sure your zipper pocket is open. And we've got our birthing hole open. See, there's the pocket fabric, so you can turn the bag through it. And then I always like my zipper pocket to be on the back of the bag, so that's going to be up against the flap. So it should be exterior, flap, zipper pocket, all that good stuff. Fold your zipper ends down. You do not want to sew through those. And we're just going to start by lining up the side gusset. Add a few clips around that side. And then we'll line up the other side gusset. So you want to bend that zipper end down into the bag. Line up that zipper gusset, not zipper gusset, but the side gusset, and clip. And then you can work your way around the outside of the bag and make sure that everything sits nicely, there's no weird puckers. Your center snips should also line up. Mine are. Pretty proud of myself, actually. Not really, it's fine. Okay. So that's what we're looking at. And then I'm going to sew with the lining side facing up, and you're just going to go around the outside edge on the top. I'm using a stitch length of 4. Go nice and slow over the sides, make sure everything's lining up. I like to do a little back stitch over the side seams just to help reinforce it all. And you want to make sure that you're sewing down further than your basting stitch for your zipper panel and your flap. You want to hide that basting stitch. Get into the side panel again. I'm almost back to where I started. I'm back stitching over those pieces. And then I'm back stitching into my seam allowance. So I just want to check back here that my stitching is going past my basting stitch for my flap, and I think it did. Pretty sure. I'm not going to trim anything down, especially not these side connectors. Again, we want that inside the bag, so it's another layer for strength. So now we're going to flip the bag through the birthing hole. What I like to do is just separate the lining and the exterior. So we've got these 2 semicircles, and oops, I just noticed looking at my exterior, you can see here I did not catch that seam. So I'm going to press this back together, and I'm just going to sew along there one more time, because that would have been bad. So starting in my seam allowance, back stitching, making sure everything's laying flat, and sewing over that seam. There we go. Go ahead and check the other, just in case. We're good. It's good on that side. All right, like I was doing, you can kind of pull the flap first, and then grab the bottom of your lining, or your exterior, my bad, and pull that through. And then push your lining fully through. Press all the seams of your exterior. Make sure that your D-rings have been caught. Your zipper panel is fully sewn in. Make sure your flap looks decent. Everything looks pretty good. I do have these threads I need to snip. Not a big deal. So then what we're gonna do is, again, I'm checking my zipper panel, making sure everything is caught, nothing's loose. All right, so we're gonna turn our zipper pocket back through. You can fold in that raw edge, and we're just gonna sew that shut. You can push out any air, especially if you're using waterproof canvas, because air tends not to want to escape. I'm going to add a woven label. sitting on this table. That would not have been good. Okay, so now we can push our lining inside the bag. Push the lining pocket down. Zip that up so we know it's good. And then you can see the waterproof canvas really helps give the bag some more shape. So if you use like a quilting cotton to line this bag, I would definitely recommend fleece or something just to give it a little extra body. But it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. What in the world? All right, so I'm gonna top stitch this down. Yeah, that's what it needs. This zipper panel needs to be top stitched down. So I don't know if that's how they do it in the pattern or what, but especially on this back. Let's see. Let me just play with this a little bit more. Let's see what happens when I zip it up. Oh, that's so good. So I guess you really don't top stitch any of that. There's that. I'll go ahead and add my crossbody strap. It's always like the good final touch. This is such a cute bag though. Like it's not very big, but it's like a pretty good medium-sized bag. See there, I love that it has a zipper panel. It goes all the way across, so even if your flap is just kind of floating over the top, it's all your belongings are still secure. So I can see this being like a really great like amusement park bag, something like that. See what I mean? Like the flap just doesn't want to quite lay naturally, and I think it's because my zipper panel is such a substantial thick fabric. So maybe if I top stitched it down it would, but I don't want to add that to this bag. I just feel like things won't sit the way they should. So over time it'll kind of loosen, but it is so cute. I love the front zipper. I'm so glad we changed it up because like you wouldn't even be able to get a phone in here if we'd left it the way it was way down below, but you could also add like 2 zippered pockets. That would be cool. You can always add a zippered pocket to the back. You could add a slip pocket to the back and just cut it down. You know, there's all different ways to make patterns more suited to your needs by just adding pockets. So that is it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It's something a little bit different. This could absolutely be made on a domestic, so please don't feel intimidated. You could use thinner materials, etc. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're new, feel free to subscribe. We'd love to have you join us. Join us. Join us.